I never imagined that refusing to give my kidney to my brother would result in my entire family disowning me. But that's exactly what happened. I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of how my family tried to guilt me into a life-threatening surgery and how their reaction showed me who they really were all along. Let me start from the beginning because context matters here. I'm the middle child in a family of 3. My older brother Jason is 29, and my younger sister Megan is 23. Growing up, Jason was always the golden child. Star athlete, straight-A student, popular, everything our parents dreamed of. Megan was the baby, adorable and sweet, always getting away with everything because she was the youngest. And me? I was just there, not particularly special at anything, not particularly troublesome. I was the invisible middle child who learned early on that the best way to survive was to stay out of the way and not cause problems. I worked hard in school, got decent grades, and went to college on a partial scholarship. I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover what the scholarship didn't, and I graduated with minimal debt. After college, I got a job as a data analyst at a mid-sized company. Nothing fancy, but stable with good benefits and room for growth. I rented a small apartment, paid my bills on time, and lived a quiet, simple life. Meanwhile, Jason followed in our dad's footsteps and became a lawyer. He made good money, drove a nice car, and my parents couldn't stop bragging about him. Megan was still in college, studying marketing and living at home rent-free, while my parents funded her entire lifestyle. I didn't mind being overlooked. Honestly, I preferred it. Less pressure, less expectation, less drama. I had my own life, my own friends, and I was content. I visited my parents for holidays, called them once a week, and maintained a surface-level relationship with my siblings. Everything was fine, or at least I thought it was, until I got the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening when my mom called. Her voice was shaking, panicked, and I immediately knew something was wrong. She told me Jason was in the hospital. He had been feeling sick for months, ignoring the symptoms because he was too busy with work. By the time he finally saw a doctor, his kidneys were failing. The doctor said he needed a transplant, and soon. My first reaction was shock and concern. Despite not being close with Jason, he was still my brother, and I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. My mom was crying, saying the doctors were running tests to find a donor, and that the whole family was getting tested to see if anyone was a match. I agreed immediately to get tested. It seemed like the right thing to do. Family helps family, right? So I went to the hospital, gave blood samples, and waited for the results. A week later, I got a call from the transplant coordinator. I was a perfect match. 6 out of 6 markers aligned, which apparently is rare, even among siblings. The coordinator explained the process, the risks, the recovery time, and asked if I wanted to move forward with more detailed testing. I told her I needed time to think about it, and she said that was completely understandable and to call her when I made a decision. That night, I did something I should have done immediately. I researched kidney donation. I read medical journals, donor testimonials, complication rates, everything I could find. And what I learned terrified me. Yes, most donors recover fine. Yes, it's considered relatively safe. But there are risks, significant risks. Donors can experience complications during surgery, infections, blood clots, even death in rare cases. Long-term, donors have a higher risk of kidney disease themselves, high blood pressure, and other health issues. Some donors struggle with chronic pain. Some regret their decision. And here's the kicker. I would be giving up a vital organ, permanently altering my body, and taking on all these risks for someone who had barely acknowledged my existence for most of my life. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Jason and I were never close. He was 7 years older than me growing up, and he treated me like an annoying kid he had to tolerate. As adults, we saw each other at family gatherings, exchanged polite small talk, and that was it. He never called me, never checked in, never showed any interest in my life. And now I was expected to give him a kidney? To undergo major surgery, risk my health, and potentially impact my future, all for someone who had treated me like I was invisible? I spent days agonizing over the decision. I talked to my best friend Sarah, who told me point blank that I didn't owe Jason anything. I talked to my boyfriend Mark, who said he would support whatever decision I made, but admitted he was worried about the risks. I even talked to a therapist who helped me work through the guilt I was feeling. And after all that soul-searching, I made my decision. I wasn't going to donate my kidney. The guilt was overwhelming at first. What kind of person refuses to help their own brother? What kind of sister says no when someone's life is on the line? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my life mattered too. My health mattered. My future mattered. And I had the right to make decisions about my own body without being guilted or pressured. So I called the transplant coordinator and told her I was declining to donate. She was professional and kind, thanked me for being honest, and said she would let the team know. Then came the hard part, telling my family. I decided to tell them in person. I drove to my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon, my stomach in knots. My mom, dad, Jason, and Megan were all there. I sat down in the living room and told them I had made my decision. I wasn't going to donate my kidney. The room went silent. My mom's face crumpled, and she started crying immediately. My dad just stared at me like I was a stranger. Jason, sitting in a chair looking pale and exhausted, didn't say anything at first. Then my mom found her voice and asked why. I tried to explain. I talked about the risks, the long-term health implications, the recovery time. I told them I had thought long and hard about it, and I just couldn't do it. My mom cut me off mid-sentence and said, "But he's your brother. He needs you. How can you be so selfish?" I felt like I had been slapped. Selfish? I was making a decision about my own body, about my own health, and I was being called selfish? I tried to stay calm and explain that I understood this was hard, but it was my choice to make. My dad finally spoke up and Dee said if you don't do this, he could die. Do you want that on your conscience? The guilt trip had officially begun, and it was even worse than I had imagined. Jason finally spoke, his voice weak but laced with bitterness. He said, "I always knew you were jealous of me, but I never thought you'd actually let me die because of it." I was stunned. Jealous? Where is this coming from? I told him this had nothing to do with jealousy, that I was simply making a decision about my own health. But he wasn't listening. None of them were. Megan, who had been quiet until now, chimed in and said, "If I was a match, I would do it without question. That's what family does." I felt tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of them. I stood up and said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision is final." Then I left. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My mom called me that night, sobbing, begging me to reconsider. She said I was killing my brother, that I would regret this for the rest of my life, that she didn't raise me to be so heartless. I tried to explain again, but she hung up on me. My dad sent me a text message saying he was ashamed to call me his daughter. Megan posted a vague message on social media about fake family members who abandon you when you need them most. And Jason? Jason sent me a single text that said, "I hope you can live with yourself." But it didn't stop there. My parents called every relative we had and told them what I had done, or rather what I refused to do. They painted me as the villain, the selfish daughter who was letting her brother die. My phone started blowing up with messages from aunts, uncles, cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all telling me I was making a huge mistake. Some were nice about it, gently encouraging me to reconsider. Others were vicious, calling me names, saying I was a terrible person, telling me I deserved to be alone. I tried defending myself to a few of them, explaining my reasons, but it didn't matter. In their eyes, I was the bad guy, and nothing I said would change that. The worst part was my extended family didn't even try to understand my perspective. No one asked about the risks I would be taking. No one acknowledged that this was major surgery. No one seemed to care that I had the right to make decisions about my own body. It was all about Jason, his life, his needs, his survival. I had become invisible again, except this time, I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being vilified. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, stayed late at the office, and avoided checking my phone. My friends rallied around me, reminding me that I had made the right decision, that my body was my own, and that no one had the right to guilt me into a major medical procedure. Mark was incredible. He held me when I cried, listened when I needed to vent, and never once made me feel bad about my choice. But even with all that support, the guilt was eating me alive. I kept wondering if I was a terrible person, if maybe I should just do it and get it over with, if maybe everyone was right and I was wrong. Then something happened that put everything into perspective. I was talking to Sarah one night, breaking down over the phone, and she said something that hit me like a truck. She said, if Jason needed $1 million for a life-saving surgery, would your family expect you to sell everything you own, go into debt, and destroy your financial future to save him? I said, no, of course not. That would be unreasonable. And she said, exactly. So why is it reasonable to expect you to risk your health and permanently alter your body? A kidney isn't just an organ you can replace. It's a part of you, and you have every right to keep it. That conversation changed everything for me. I realized I had been so consumed with guilt that I hadn't stopped to think about how unreasonable the expectation was. Yes, organ donation is a beautiful, selfless thing, but it's also a choice. A deeply personal choice that no one should be pressured or guilted into making. And the fact that my family couldn't respect that choice said everything I needed to know about how they saw me. I wasn't a person with my own life and health to consider. I was just a spare parts donor for the golden child. Around this time, my family stopped reaching out. The calls, texts, and guilt trips suddenly stopped. I thought maybe they had finally accepted my decision and were moving on. But I was wrong. What actually happened was they had found another donor. My mom's younger sister, my Aunt Carol, had gotten tested and was a match. Not as perfect a match as me, but close enough. She agreed to donate her kidney to Jason, and just like that, I was no longer needed. You would think that would be the end of it, that my family would be relieved and grateful and move on. But no. Instead, they used Aunt Carol's decision as another weapon against me. My mom called me for the first time in weeks, not to tell me they found a donor, but to rub it in my face. She said, your Aunt Carol is doing what you should have done. She's putting family first, unlike you. I didn't respond. I just let her talk, let her get all out. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She said, don't bother coming to the hospital when Jason has his surgery. You made it clear you don't care about this family, so we don't want you there. And she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My own mother had essentially disowned me. The surgery happened a few weeks later. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't call. I didn't send flowers or a card. I stayed home, went to work, and tried to move on with my life. But moving on was harder than I thought. I kept checking social media, seeing updates from family members about how well the surgery went, how Jason was recovering, how Aunt Carol was a hero. And in every single post, there was an undertone of judgment aimed at me. One cousin even posted a long rant about family loyalty and how some people only care about themselves. She didn't name me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I decided to take a break from social media. I deactivated my accounts, stopped checking family group chats, and focused on my own life. Mark and I started planning a trip, something to look forward to, something to remind me that there was a whole world outside of my toxic family. And slowly, very slowly, I started to feel lighter. The guilt was still there, but it was becoming more manageable. I was starting to accept that I had made the right decision, even if no one else could see it. Then came the holidays. Thanksgiving was approaching, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't invited to my parents' house. No phone call, no text, nothing. Megan posted pictures of the family gathered around the table. Jason looking healthy and recovered, everyone smiling. I wasn't in a single photo because I wasn't there. I spent Thanksgiving with Mark's family, who welcomed me with open arms and treated me with more love and respect than my own family had in years. It was bittersweet. I was grateful for their kindness, but it hurt knowing my own family had cast me aside so easily. Christmas came and went the same way. No invitation, no gifts, no acknowledgement that I even existed. My parents sent a family Christmas card with a photo of the four of them, my mom, dad, Jason, and Megan. I had been erased, literally cut out of the family picture. Mark found me crying over that card one night and asked if I wanted to reach out to them, try to mend things. I told them no. They had made their choice, and I had to accept it. But here's what I didn't expect. As time went on, cracks started to appear in my family's perfect narrative. Aunt Carol, who had donated her kidney, started having complications. She developed an infection after surgery that required additional hospital stays. Then she started experiencing chronic pain that doctors couldn't explain. Her recovery, which was supposed to take a few weeks, dragged on for months. And through it all, my family barely acknowledged what she was going through. They were so focused on Jason's recovery that they forgot about the person who had saved him. I found out about Aunt Carol's struggles through a mutual friend. I reached out to her, not to say I told you so, but to check in and see how she was doing. She was surprisingly open with me. She told me she didn't regret donating, but she admitted the recovery had been much harder than anyone prepared her for. She said she felt used by my family, like they had praised her when they needed her, but now that Jason was fine, they had moved on and left her to deal with the aftermath alone. She also told me something that made my stomach turn. She said my mom had asked her to donate before asking me, but she had initially declined because of her own health issues. It was only after I refused that they went back to her and guilt her into it. That revelation hit me hard. My family had tried to protect me from the ask initially, not out of love, but because they knew Aunt Carol wasn't the ideal candidate. But once I said no, they had no problem pressuring someone with existing health issues to undergo a risky surgery. It was manipulative and cruel, and it confirmed everything I had suspected about them. They didn't care about people. They cared about getting what they wanted, no matter the cost. I stayed in touch with Aunt Carol after that. We bonded over our shared experience of being used by my family. She eventually recovered, though she still deals with pain and health issues. And she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "You were smart to say no. I wish I had the courage to do the same." Hearing that from her, someone who had gone through the surgery and experienced the consequences, validated my decision in a way nothing else could. Meanwhile, my family's silence toward me continued. Months turned into a year, and I didn't hear from any of them. Not on my birthday, not on holidays, not even when I got a major promotion at work. I was dead to them, and they had made that abundantly clear. But here's the thing. The longer I stayed away from them, the happier I became. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't trying to earn love and approval that was never going to come. I was just living my life, and it felt incredible. Mark and I got engaged, and I didn't tell my family. I didn't want their negativity or drama tainting what should have been a happy moment. Instead, I celebrated with my friends, with Mark's family, and with Aunt Carol, who I had invited to the engagement party. She cried tears of joy and told me she was proud of me for choosing happiness. That moment meant more to me than any approval from my parents ever could. Planning the wedding was bittersweet. I knew my family wouldn't be there, and that hurt more than I wanted to admit. But I also knew I didn't want them there. I didn't want people who had treated me so horribly to witness one of the happiest days of my life. So I didn't invite them. Not my parents, not Jason, not Megan. I invited the people who actually loved and supported me, and that was enough. The wedding was beautiful, small, intimate, and filled with people who genuinely cared about me. As I walked down the aisle, I didn't feel sad about my family's absence. I felt free. Free from their expectations, their judgment, their conditional love. Mark and I exchanged vows surrounded by people who celebrated us, and it was perfect. Aunt Carol was there, beaming with pride, and in many ways, she felt more like family than my own blood relatives ever had. But of course, my family found out about the wedding. Megan saw pictures on social media from one of my friends and called me for the first time in over a year. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She just launched into a tirade about how I had betrayed the family by not inviting them, how I was selfish and horrible, and how I would regret this. I listened for about 30 seconds before I hung up. I didn't owe her an explanation. I didn't owe any of them anything. My mom called next, and this time I answered. She tried the guilt trip approach, saying she couldn't believe I had gotten married without telling them, that she had dreamed of being at her daughter's wedding, that I had broken her heart. I calmly told her that she had broken my heart first when she disowned me for making a decision about my own body. I told her that if she wanted to be part of my life, she should have treated me with respect and love, not guilt and manipulation. She started crying and said I was being cruel. I told her I was being honest, and honesty isn't cruelty. Then I hung up. That conversation was the last time I spoke to my mother. She sent a few texts after that, but I didn't respond. I had said everything I needed to say, and there was nothing left to discuss. I had moved on, built a life without them, and I was happier than I had ever been. My dad never reached out. Jason never reached out. And Megan's only contact was that angry phone call. It became clear that unless I gave them what they wanted, which was submission and compliance, they had no interest in having a relationship with me. Time went on, and life continued. Mark and I thrived. We bought a house, traveled, built careers, and started talking about starting a family of our own. My friends became my family, and Mark's family welcomed me as one of their own. I had everything I needed, everything I wanted, and none of it involved the people who shared my DNA. And honestly, I had no regrets. Choosing myself over their expectations was the best decision I ever made. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a message from Jason. It was short and impersonal. He said he had been thinking about everything that happened and wanted to talk. I stared at that message for a long time, trying to decide if I even wanted to respond. Part of me was curious. Part of me wanted closure. But a bigger part of me knew that talking to him would just open old wounds. So I didn't respond. I deleted the message and moved on. A few weeks later, Aunt Carol told me that Jason's health had taken a turn. The transplant had been successful initially, but he was now dealing with rejection issues. His body was fighting the kidney, and he was back on medication, back in and out of hospitals. Aunt Carol said the family was stressed and struggling, and she thought that's why Jason had reached out to me. Not because he genuinely wanted to apologize or make amends, but because he was scared and wanted to ease his conscience. Hearing that confirmed what I already suspected. Jason didn't care about me. He cared about himself, just like he always had. I made peace with the fact that my family would probably never understand or accept my decision. And that was okay. I didn't need their understanding or acceptance. I had my own life, my own family, my own happiness, and nothing they said or did could take that away from me. I had learned a hard but valuable lesson. You can't force people to respect your boundaries. You can't make people value you if they've decided you're disposable. All you can do is walk away and build a life with people who see your worth. Looking back now, refusing to donate my kidney was the catalyst for the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to see my family for who they really were. It showed me that conditional love isn't love at all. It taught me to prioritize my own health, happiness, and well-being over guilt and obligation. And it led me to a life surrounded by people who genuinely love and support me. Would I go back and change my decision? Absolutely not. Because that decision, as painful as it was, set me free. Free from a family that saw me as a means to an end. Free from the suffocating expectations and the constant feeling of not being enough. Free to live authentically, without apology, without guilt. And that freedom is worth more than any relationship built on manipulation and obligation ever could be. I chose myself, and in doing so, I found the life and the family I truly deserved.